On average, we've got like a 15 to 18% conversion rate. So conversion as in someone goes to the page and completes the quiz. So let's call it 20% of those people actually complete the quiz. And of those, about 8% of the ones completing the quiz are becoming new patients.
Hey there, welcome to the Dr. Marketing Tips Show. I am Jennifer.
And I'm Corey.
And today we're going to dive into lead magnets, what they are, why they matter, and how your medical practice can use them to attract the right patients and grow your database. And let me say this, I've been pushing pretty hard about which lead magnets are working for our clients, which ones are producing results, et cetera, et cetera. And after pulling some patient data and comparing it to the data that we've been getting through the lead magnets, I can say 100% that these things are making a difference when it comes to driving new patients. So when Corey brought this topic up, we said, this is a great topic. We should be bringing it to our viewers, listeners, wherever you're coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. So first, let's actually, just for those of you that may not know, let's define what a lead magnet is, and then we'll talk through a couple of examples I think that you could implement at your practice. So essentially, a lead magnet is a piece of valuable content or a tool or essentially something you're giving away in exchange for a prospective patient's email in most cases, but you can do other contact info too. So an example of that would be you create a landing page. Let's say you're an orthopedic practice. You've got a hip quiz on your landing page, and this quiz will help a patient determine if a hip procedure is right for them. So it'll have questions like, has the pain persisted for more than X amount of time? Does it limit the activities that you can do and things like that? And so what happens is, so as a patient, I will fill out this quiz, and then to get my results, I need to give you my email, press the submit button. On the flip side of that, there'll be a thank you page I land on. And in this example, it'll say, you, according to your answers, you may want to see an orthopedic surgeon about potential treatment options. However, the only way to know for sure is to come in for an appointment. So, you've got your disclaimers and things on there, but what you're doing is you're actually self-qualifying the patient so they know sort of what they're in for, or if it is actually time. You're providing them value up front without really asking for anything in return. So you're kind of building goodwill, you're building authority, that what you're talking about kind of thing. And what we've been seeing is that depending on what the lead magnet is, they do a pretty darn good job of driving new patient appointments.
Yeah, and and now that we've been grabbing patient data, just emails, and comparing it to the results on the lead magnet when we're capturing emails, we actually know it's not just about driving a list, but these patients are booking appointments.
Right. Yeah. So I was working, I think it was last week, with a behavioral health client of ours, and we've been doing lead magnets for them for the past couple of quarters. So what we've found is we've tried a couple of different things. We've done some infographics, we've done some ebooks, those kinds of things, and they do fine. But what we found is the idea of this quiz really drives people right to the practice. So on average, we've got like a 15 to 18% conversion rate. So conversion as in someone goes to the page and completes the quiz. So let's call it 20% of those people actually complete the quiz. And of those, about 8% of the ones completing the quiz are becoming new patients. And so we know without a doubt that the quiz is helping them get to a point where they say, hey, you know what? Therapy, maybe it is time. It is right for me. So we've got an anxiety quiz, we've got a depression quiz, we've got a couples therapy quiz, and coming up soon, we're going to have a substance use quiz. And the what's interesting is the couples quiz, it doesn't necessarily convert as well as the depression and the anxiety, but for those that fill it out, the conversion rate to new patients is somewhere in the 20% range. So it's almost double as effective, even though there's less people doing it. And so to me, that just says like we're reaching the right audience and we're giving them something that they want, that they actually value. And it's doing what it's supposed to, and just allowing them to say, hey, you know what, maybe it is time for me to do something about this. And that's the whole point.
How are you marketing? So once you have the quiz on there, what are you doing to drive traffic to the quiz?
Good question. Yeah. So for those, we have we're doing two different paths really. We've got kind of the organic route where it actually just goes on the service page. So there's like a full width container that goes across the website and says, hey, take this quiz kind of thing. When it first launches, we also have a pop-up that comes up. So that'll last for a couple of weeks, then that goes away. Then it kind of lives on that page. It's also on the main slider of their website. We don't want to clutter that. So there's just, two or three messages that are always kind of up there. There's like some branding and then whatever initiative that we have going on. And then from a paid side, we'll run some social ads to that because people don't really search for that. If they do, we've kind of got that covered just because the page is optimized. But if you, and just as an example, do a search for like anxiety quizzes, there's a ton of them. So I'm not really concerned with showing up in search for that. It's more about capturing someone who's a little bit further down the funnel that maybe is familiar with the practice, or maybe saw an ad on social, but not necessarily searching for it. And those tend to do pretty well.
I have had great success, like when we have clients that are like, oh, I want to advertise on Facebook. We get, impressions on Facebook and Instagram on the meta products. But when we run quizzes, we actually get results. And we find that we're actually getting people to fill out the quizzes. And so I'm to this point now looking at how can we incorporate these lead magnets, and really the quizzes are what I'm seeing the most success with the clients that I'm working with. How can we incorporate the quizzes into some of the OTT stuff? Because you've got now, like if you buy on the Disney Campaign Manager or on the Hulu networks, you can run an ad, but you can actually do it where it pops up on the side. The quizzes might be a way that you can actually see if you're going to get a bump, like actually get some kind of conversion. And then I'm also running a couple tests right now on re-engagement with patients who haven't, who came in for something, but didn't follow through with surgery or something like that. And then using direct mail with a quiz component to see if we can reconvert those patients. And so I think lead magnets, like generally speaking, lead magnets are converting new patients, but then the quizzes themselves are such a great way to self-qualify, and we can use them to kind of amplify all the other channels that we're marketing on.
Yeah, and another one that I've seen success with that is honestly, it's a bit heavier of a lift, but these on-demand webinars. So I'm working with an orthopedic practice right now, and they've got a hand surgeon that wants to do something who kind of wants like some more limelight. And I suggested this idea. So we're moving forward with that. And he's going to record this like 10-minute webinar that's going to walk through this specific carpal tunnel procedure that he wants to focus on. And then so the idea is everything that we just said still holds true. There's a landing page, there's a thank you page. Only instead of a quiz, when you hit the thank you page, there's this on-demand webinar. So this is just something that he records. We'll edit it, put it up there, market it. But his team is also going to send that to patients before they come in for an appointment. So it's nice because we get the added value of, yes, you're still going to be able to kind of self-qualify. You can watch and listen to this thing and just make sure his vibe is okay. Like you're okay with going to see this guy. You'll get some added information about that. But I think the tipping point, the selling point for him was, well, we can also have your team send this out to patients before they come in, let's say for their first appointment with you, and maybe clear up some questions before they even come in, so you don't have to repeat yourself as much, and that can maybe speed up appointment time or just allow for different conversations to occur versus the basic stuff. And he was like, cool, that sounds great, let's do it. And so again, this is another opportunity to provide something of value, because it's almost like when you're sitting there and you're watching this thing, it's like you've got 10 to 12 minutes almost with the provider. And then on top of that, again, it positions him as an expert and an authority in the space because it's him talking directly to a patient for 12 minutes. So again, heavier lift to do that, but we've seen some good results with that in other practices, and I'm getting ready to roll one of those out here in the next month or two with this client. So one other thing I thought was interesting is I was looking up some research as we got ready to record this, and I found this stat from Get Response, and they said that for written content, about 60% of marketers find that the short form content, like a checklist or an infographic, is more effective than some type of long form content when it comes to lead magnets. And I would say that what I have found is that tends to be true. We see that if we do this, like a 15-page guide or an ebook or something like that, it does not do as well as like a one-page checklist or the quiz. And so I think that, that's something to keep in mind as you're going to roll one of these out, maybe for your group, is that you don't have to go, above and beyond and write a 30-page thing, because people aren't going to read that anyway. So just kind of keep it simple if you're getting ready to roll one of these out.
Yeah, and I will say I used to be a big fan of making a infographic a lead magnet, and I kind of got away from making that my lead magnet, and now I'm leaning more towards the quizzes and like the webinars and like that kind of stuff. The quizzes, because one, they're pretty easy to do, and they're not graphic heavy, they're not like super intense, and they're super effective. And then the infographics, I like them to get seen and shared and everything like that. And so I've been leaning away from gating the infographics and more like gating like guides, like you just said, or the quizzes, which are just great for bringing in new patients.
Yeah, and I think, the good thing about the quiz too is it's interactive. So you almost feel like when you're doing it, subconsciously, like you are investing in it, like you're engaging with it. And so I think that there's a level of branding that has, almost like a pull through effect, because you're doing something with it instead of just downloading it and saying like, boy, that's a lot of pages, or whatever you would do with a longer guide. And so again, I think it builds that trust, and it positions the practice as an authority in the space. It kind of warms up the patient a little bit before they step into the office. They sort of, they get a sense for who you are, who the provider is, kind of what to expect. And what's nice about the infographics, like you mentioned too, is, for quiz, you would have to create specific content that says, like on social, for example, go take this quiz. But for the infographic, you can just split up the parts of it and then turn that into additional social content, which is nice. So you have the added value of you're investing all this extra time to create this infographic, but then you can cut up your infographic into, 15 different pieces or 15 different graphics, and then use those on social. So there's kind of like a win-win there too.
Another thing you can do with your infographics is turn them into, change the formatting and use them as posters in office.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Something that we're starting to do more and more is take our infographics and resize them for in office, because then you're kind of crossing across the board. It's just another way that you can reuse it.
The baseball one that we did, it was for Tommy John's, and we got that resized into a poster, and it's still in some of the offices, and that was years and years ago. So
it absolutely is. Another thing to think about with these lead magnets. So some practices that we work with are really comfortable doing email. And then we have a couple that are just not comfortable with like the email drip campaigns that come after the fact. And for some practices, their list has grown so much that it becomes pretty expensive to run email campaigns. So one thing that we've started doing is, rather than get really heavy into email that we have to keep up with, and maintain, we'll run a quiz, and then we'll have like a super robust thank you page at the back end. And that thank you page can reinforce whatever topic that you're talking about. It doesn't have to just say thank you. It literally is a landing page that's addressing everything that came from the quiz. And I think you could probably use like conditional logic. And if they score this, you send them to this thank you page. And if they score that, you can send them to another one, just to kind of reinforce what we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. And then on that page, you can, provide some additional resources like call to actions to schedule an appointment, or, hey, maybe check out these other blogs that relate to, hip surgery, if that's what you're going after. Or I have, for one of the clients that I've been doing this with, they also have a podcast. And so on that thank you page, we've been saying like, here's a couple of helpful resources, and then we'll link to some relevant information for the blog. But also, hey, we have this podcast, subscribe. And we've got experts there sharing tips, once a month. So subscribe, make sure you never miss an episode. And we've seen that kind of boost some listenership there as well, which again is more of a long-term play, but it is effective in branding, and comes back to that idea of let's provide this educational value at no cost, and sort of deposit this goodwill in the minds of the patients for sure.
So let's talk real quick about possible ideas for different specialties, because I know that our listeners are like, okay, but what's my quiz? Like, what should I talk about? And the thing is, you don't have to do just one. If you have multiple specialties or doctors who focus on multiple things, you can do quizzes or special lead magnets across the board as it relates to your practice. And so like one for ortho would be like, are you a candidate for hip replacement? Are you a candidate for knee replacement? Are you a candidate for robotic knee replacement? All self-qualifying opportunities.
Oh yeah, 1,000%. And it's nice because, like you said, if you have specific specialty pages or service lines on your site, honestly, you could set up a quiz for each one of those if you wanted to, and that's gonna boost people as they're going to look at those on every single page. If you're in behavioral health, like I said, you could do. We have some guides on, or I'm sorry, some quizzes on anxiety, on depression, on couples. You could do like a parent's guide to teen anxiety as an example, like what to expect as your toddler moves into the next phase, things like that. Primary care, I think you could do. A good one would be like a wellness visit checklist. That's an easy one to put together. The content is readily available, and I think patients would appreciate having it all sort of in one place as a one-page thing that they can print out. And again, that's something where not a huge lift. You're not creating some intense graphic heavy. I mean, you want it to look good, but it doesn't have to be like over the top. And you're not creating 30 pages worth of stuff. You're just saying, here's what to know. Here's some questions you may want to ask when you're actually in the office with a provider. And that's really valuable to a patient because they can print that out, they can take it, they appreciate that. And again, positions the practice as an expert there.
We've got a couple on primary care that we've done that are like, which annual checkups do you need to get based on stage of life? That one does really well. For women's health, we do like, is this menopause? And it's a quiz, like that's like talking about symptoms. And then at the end, it has like a downloadable asset that's related to menopause based on stage of life. Dermatology, we do skincare tips. We even have from dermatology jumping over to like med spas. We do like the type of, like the type of treatment for certain parts of your body. Like if you're looking to do fillers or something like that, like what are you going to ask for based on what's going on with your face? Vascular, could it be PAD? We do PAD, we do free vein screenings, we do all kinds of things like that. So it just depends on your specialty, but the sky is the limit. Fertility, could this be endometriosis? Like, what's the difference? Like, do you know the difference between IVF versus something else? Like, there's just, the sky is the limit when it comes to quizzes.
Yeah, there's one that I want to mention, but I also want to talk about some tips for creating some like really effective lead magnets. And number one is know your audience and tailor it to their specific pain point, right? Like you want to make sure that you're setting it up to answer their specific question. And the reason that I held back my example until I said that is because we have in ophthalmology practice that we work with, and one of the quizzes that he's using is, are you a candidate for laser vision correction? And the way that quiz is set up is it's not just a Q&A and you're just like clicking the little radio buttons. It's actually like big images and icons, because we know that people that are taking this have poor vision, most likely. That's why they're taking this thing. And so it's like big blocks that you can click on. And the point of this thing is to, one, see if you qualify for it, but then two, as you're going through it, it's also asking questions to say like, is it important to see in this type of light or during this type of activity? And what he's doing is not only helping you qualify if you, to see if you qualify just in general, but also what type of lens makes the most sense. So it's almost like a very subtle but still educational like upsell opportunity. So at the end of it, you could say like, yes, you are a candidate. And also from your answers, it sounds like a multifocal might be the way to go. And so it's kind of a win-win for the practice, but I think it's, you know, it's not, I don't want to say salesy because it's definitely not, but it's also educational for the patient because then they can go, oh, I didn't even know that was an option, but that does actually sound like the right thing for me. So, yeah, I think if you know your audience, obviously that will help determine what type of lead magnet that you're going to create. And like we shared earlier with that statistic, keeping it short, actionable, easy to digest, that's going to help you in actually getting it off the ground, but also help the patient in consuming it. And then, of course, you want to make sure you've got a really good CTA on there that it very clearly is a next step. I would suggest you do that CTA not only on the thank you page, but also on whatever the thing is. So, for example, if you do create a checklist like we were talking about, like an annual wellness visit checklist for primary care, on the bottom of that, it should say, you know, scan here to book an appointment or go here for whatever the next step is. So you actually give them that CTA on the thank you page, but also on whatever the lead magnet is. Same thing with an infographic.
Yep, I think this is great stuff, Corey, and hopefully our audience here is paying attention and has a ton of ideas that they can implement back at their practice. So with that, I am Jennifer.
I'm Corey.
And we'll see you next time on the Dr. Marketing Tips Show. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
If you want more like this, hit like and subscribe so you'll always be alerted to new episodes when they come out. And if you want information about us, visit us over at insightmg.com. That's insightmg.com. We'll see you on the next episode.